I mean, think about it. You look out over a perfectly manicured lawn, right?
Hmm.
And there is this heavy expectation of total natural
Oh,
harmony.
absolutely. It is a very deliberate, very specific illusion.
Yeah, because you see the vibrant flowers, the rich soil, the meticulously edged grass, and it all just looks pristine, uninterrupted, you know?
Right, but we crave this aesthetic of the untouched wilderness, even though every single square inch of that space is entirely manufactured.
Exactly.
A modern domestic garden is essentially, well, it's like a life-size diorama.
Mm.
It requires constant, aggressive human intervention just to maintain it.
Right, and to keep that illusion alive, we go completely out of our way to hide the infrastructure that makes it possible.
We really do.
We bury the sprinkler lines, we tuck the trowels behind the bushes. I mean, we want all our tools to be essentially invisible.
Because we demand the aesthetic of nature without the visual clutter of the labor required to keep it alive. We basically mandate that our tools be camouflaged.
But then you step into the actual physical reality of maintaining that space, and suddenly that desperate desire for camouflage becomes a literal trap.
Yeah, a dangerous one, actually.
Okay, let's unpack this,
Mm.
because our mission today is to look at a highly specific, seemingly mundane, everyday object and discover the brilliant, hidden logic behind its design.
And it is a really fascinating journey to get there.
It really is. We are pulling from an excerpt from a long-running gardening blog by an author who goes by the name Ang.
Right.
And what starts as a simple diary entry about buying supplies uncovers a surprisingly clever design tweak involving garden hoses, visibility, and, well, why we really need to start challenging our traditional visual aesthetics.
It is a brilliant example of utilitarian disruption hidden inside a very ordinary errand.
By the end of this deep dive, you, the listener, are going to completely rethink the colors of the tools you use around your own home. I guarantee it.
Oh, for sure. You won't look at a hardware store the same way again.
So let's set the scene here. The excerpt we are looking at is titled Notes on Gardening Part 947.
Which is just an incredible number.
Right, Part 947. And right off the bat, Ang is out on what they describe as a field trip to get gardening supplies.
A classic weekend mission.
Exactly. But they admit right there in the text that they ended up getting entirely distracted and buying more seeds instead of focusing on the gear they actually went for.
Which is just deeply relatable for anyone who gardens.
I mean, it's like going to the grocery store for a carton of milk and leaving with a cart full of snacks. You go to the hardware store for a very specific structural item, your brain gets hijacked by the possibility of new plants, and you forget the infrastructure entirely.
Yeah, that cognitive overload is a universal experience for the enthusiast.
Yeah.
I mean, you walk into a supply center with a logistical plan, and you are immediately derailed by the sheer biological possibilities of the space.
Right, the plants are just more fun.
Exactly. It highlights where our priorities usually lie. We care about the living things, the plants, much more than the tools used to sustain them.
But amidst the distraction of the seeds, Ang is actually on a mission. They note that they're looking for equipment to outfit numerous gardening areas.
Yeah.
And they specifically highlight a backyard balcony. So I want to pause on those details for a second.
Sure.
With this being literally part 947 of a series and Ang actively managing multiple distinct areas like a backyard balcony, what does this tell us? I mean, how should we be weighing their equipment recommendations?
Well, what's fascinating here is the sheer volume of documented experience combined with the spatial constraints they are working under.
Right, because this isn't just someone throwing some tomato seeds in the dirt for the first time.
Not at all. Part 947 implies an immense multi-year dedication to observing and recording the reality of gardening. This is a seasoned veteran.
Yeah, they've been around the block.
But more importantly, outfitting a backyard balcony requires a completely different approach to logistics than a sprawling suburban lawn.
Right, a balcony is a highly constrained environment. I mean, you can't just toss a hose over your shoulder and hope it lands in the grass.
Precisely. You are dealing with hardscapes, limited square footage, and a very tight margin for error when it comes to storing equipment.
Everything has to have a place.
Right. So when someone with this much empirical experience who is managing these tricky microenvironments evaluates a tool, they aren't looking at it through the lens of a novice.
They know the standard equipment inside and out.
Exactly. They know the pain points of traditional gear.
Which makes their reaction in this post so telling, I think. Because they know all the standard gear, you have to wonder what could they possibly find at the store that would actually surprise them.
And it turns out to be something deceptively simple.
Yeah, Aang is testing out different pipes for all these gardening areas, and they stumble across rubber hoses at the store, but not standard hoses.
Right.
To their absolute amazement, they discover rubber hoses in bright pink and gold.
Which is just a wild image if you're used to traditional gardening gear.
Oh, totally. Aang explicitly notes that these colors seemed rather unusual. They stand in stark contrast to the typical garden hoses on the market, which are almost universally green or black.
Universally. Yes.
Now, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
I want my yard or even my balcony to be a peaceful, private space. I always thought gardening equipment was deliberately supposed to blend in with nature, right?
That is the common expectation, yeah.
Green and black make perfect sense. A green hose hides in the grass. A black hose vanishes into the soil or the shadows. Pink and gold rubber sounds less like a peaceful oasis and more like a 1970s disco.
It really does.
I mean, why would anyone want that on their backyard balcony? If I know where I left my hose, why do I need my yard to look like a construction site?
Well, that tension you're describing is the exact friction between the aesthetic ideal and physical reality. You're reacting to decades of ingrained manufacturing assumptions.
Assumptions about camouflage, you mean?
It's exactly. If you look at the history of domestic landscaping, outdoor tools were designed with a primary mandate, and that mandate was visual deference.
Visual deference, I like that term.
The aesthetic goal was minimal visual interruption. The human brain wants to perceive the garden as an organic, cohesive whole.
Right.
So manufacturers produced hoses in forest green to mimic foliage or matte black to mimic earth. We all collectively accepted that the tool should apologize for its own existence by hiding.
Wow, yeah. We prioritize the visual piece of the space over the physical presence of the tool.
Yes, and this assumption is so deeply hardwired into our consumer psychology that when a true expert like Ang encounters a deviation from this norm, like a bright pink hose, their immediate reaction is sheer amazement.
Because it just feels wrong.
Right. It feels anomalous. It feels like a utilitarian mistake.
But Aang doesn't just scoff at it and walk away. If these colors are so unusual and counterintuitive, there must be a highly logical utilitarian reason for their existence.
And there absolutely is.
Right, because Aang actually looks past that initial aesthetic shock, and they reveal the highly logical reason for these neon colors.
The function over the form.
According to the post, the pink and gold hoses are specifically engineered for one singular purpose, and that is high visibility.
Yes.
Because they are pink and gold, they are incredibly easy to spot in the grass or the foliage.
Which changes everything.
It really does. Aang points out that this visibility serves two distinct, crucial purposes. First, it helps prevent tripping. And second, it helps prevent damage from lawnmowers.
And this is where the camouflage aesthetic completely collapses under the weight of functional reality.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's essentially like putting a neon high-vis vest on your garden equipment.
That's a great way to look at it.
It flips the script entirely. Instead of trying to hide the tool, the design is screaming for you to look at it.
Right, because in a truly wild environment, camouflage is a survival mechanism for animals.
Right.
But a garden is not a wild environment.
Not at all.
It is a highly cultivated domestic workspace with active human foot traffic and heavy spinning machinery.
Yeah, designing a tool to blend into that specific environment is essentially like programming a landmine in a video game.
A landmine, wow, yeah.
Right. It is designed specifically to blend into the floor textures so that the player triggers it. By making a heavy, snake-like object perfectly match the grass it sits in, you aren't creating harmony. You are actively engineering a hidden hazard.
That is a highly accurate analogy. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at how human vision actually functions.
Okay.
Specifically, we need to talk about cognitive load and peripheral vision.
Right, because we aren't staring at our feet all the time.
Exactly. When you are walking through your yard or when you are pushing a lawnmower, your focus is projected forward. You're relying on your peripheral vision to navigate the ground immediately around you.
And peripheral vision is notoriously terrible at identifying shapes, right? I mean, it mostly just detects motion and contrast.
You hit the nail on the head. The photoreceptors in the outer edges of your retina, the rods, are highly sensitive to light and movement, but they lack high-resolution shape recognition.
So they can't tell a green hose from a green blade of grass.
Exactly. Furthermore, your brain engages in a process called sensory adaptation.
What's that?
Well, if you are standing in a sea of green grass, your visual cortex actively filters out the color green to save processing power. It just becomes background noise.
Wait, really? So a dark green hose lying in tall dog green grass is literally invisible to your brain while you are walking.
Literally invisible,
You
yes.
aren't just failing to notice it, your neurological hardware is actively ignoring it.
Yes. You don't see it until your foot is caught in it, or until you hear the catastrophic sound of a mower blade hitting dense rubber.
Oh, that sound is the worst.
Let's break down those two specific hazards Aang mentioned, because they represent two massive design failures that the pink and gold hoses solve through basic cognitive ergonomics.
Let's start with the first one, which is tripping, human safety.
Right. A garden hose is heavy, it creates unpredictable loops, and it doesn't lay perfectly flat. It is the perfect snare.
A tripwire.
When it is camouflaged, you are inviting a trip and fall accident in an environment that is often filled with concrete borders, sharp edging tools, or uneven ground.
And a fall in a garden can be really serious.
Absolutely. The high visibility pink acts as an immediate cognitive trigger.
Because pink doesn't exist naturally in a sea of green grass,
Yeah.
it forces the brain to pay attention.
Right. Neon colors trigger a completely different set of photoreceptors. In evolutionary biology, bright, unnatural colors, like the coloring of a poisonous frog or a brightly colored wasp signal, a warning.
Oh, wow.
They demand immediate cognitive processing. When your peripheral vision catches that bright pink or reflective gold, it bypasses your aesthetic judgment entirely and taps directly into your spatial awareness.
So you just adjust your stride automatically.
Yes, you step over the loop without even consciously thinking about it.
The tool essentially screams, I am here, do not step on me. It prioritizes your physical safety over your desire for a pretty lawn. But what about that pushback I had earlier? The idea that if I just remember where I left my hose, I don't need my yard to look like a construction site.
Well, that brings us back to the concept of cognitive load.
Okay, right.
The traditional green or black design implicitly assumes that the user will always perfectly remember where they left the tool. It places the burden of safety entirely on human memory.
Which is incredibly fallible.
Especially if you are managing numerous gardening areas like Aang.
Yeah, I mean, you leave the hose out on Tuesday, you go back inside, it rains for 2 days, the grass grows an inch, and by Saturday, your green hose has completely vanished into the landscape.
Gone.
You have completely forgotten exactly where you coiled it.
And the pink and gold design removes that cognitive burden entirely. It acknowledges human error as a baseline reality.
It's idiot-proof, essentially.
Exactly. It says, you don't need to waste mental energy remembering where I am, because the moment you step outside, I will visibly announce my location.
That is a profound shift. Moving from a user-dependent safety model to a product-dependent safety model.
It is a massive shift in design philosophy.
Which leads directly into Aang's second point, which is preventing damage from lawnmowers. This is about equipment preservation and operator safety.
Think about the physics of a lawnmower interacting with a hidden rubber hose.
Oh, man.
You have a heavy steel blade spinning at roughly 3,000 revolutions per minute.
That is an immense amount of rotational kinetic energy.
Huge. And it suddenly meets the dense tensile strength of a synthetic rubber tube.
Right, because a mower blade hitting a hose doesn't just cleanly slice it in half.
No, it doesn't. The rubber catches the blade, it can violently stall the engine, it can bend the mower's crankshaft, or it can rip the hose entirely out of the ground.
Potentially whipping it toward the operator.
Exactly.
It transforms a quiet Saturday chore into a highly dangerous mechanical failure in a fraction of a second.
And all because the industry decided decades ago that hoses should be green to look pretty.
It's crazy when you put it like that. When Aang points out that the pink and gold colors prevent mower damage, they are highlighting a massive utilitarian victory.
Absolutely.
The visual contrast allows the operator to steer the machinery around the hazard long before the blade ever gets close.
It is such a simple, elegant solution.
It really is. It takes a problem that we have all just blindly accepted as the cost of doing yard work. You know, tripping over the hose, accidentally nicking it with the edge trimmer, destroying a sprinkler head, and it solves it entirely through the application of contrasting color wavelengths.
It challenges that ingrained, almost invisible assumption that a hose must be green.
Right. And Aang, representing the seasoned traditional gardening community, notes that this makes total sense. They write that these colors provide a great alternative to the typical green or black garden hoses.
And that willingness to pivot is the mark of a truly analytical mind.
Yeah, they didn't just dismiss it.
Aang didn't reject the pink and gold hoses just because they looked weird or broke the aesthetic rules. They evaluated the tool based on how it actually performed in the physical environment.
Right. They recognized that the camouflage was a liability and the visibility was an asset.
Exactly.
So, what does this all mean? Let's zoom out and look at the broader implications of what we've unpacked today.
It's a fun journey to look back on.
We started with this incredibly relatable, almost mundane scenario. A veteran gardener named Aang goes on a routine field trip for supplies, gets totally distracted by the allure of new seeds, but eventually ends up looking at plumbing for a backyard balcony.
Right.
And in that routine errand, they document a brilliant shift in utilitarian design.
They discovered that the traditional rules of natural camouflage are actively working against us in cultivated domestic spaces.
We learned that those jarring 1970s disco pink and gold rubber hoses aren't some avant-garde novelty item.
Not at all.
They are highly engineered tools that prioritize high visibility safety and cognitive ergonomics over traditional green and black camouflage.
They're designed to trigger your peripheral vision so you don't trip over them.
Right, and to protect both the hose and your machinery from catastrophic collisions.
It is a perfect example of form completely submitting to function.
And doing so in a way that shatters our deeply ingrained visual expectations of what a garden is supposed to look like.
The core takeaway here, for you, the listener, is about questioning the default settings of the objects you interact with every day.
Yeah, it's so easy to just accept things as they are.
It is incredibly easy to dismiss something that looks unusual or even ugly at first glance. But sometimes the most jarring design choices exist to solve a problem we didn't even realize we had.
That makes a lot of sense.
We become so accustomed to the subtle hazards in our environment, like a camouflaged hose acting as a tripwire, that we stop seeing them as design flaws.
Yeah, I mean, when we trip over a green hose in green grass, we don't blame the manufacturer for making a dangerous product. We just blame ourselves for being clumsy.
Exactly. We absorb the blame for bad design. So the application of this knowledge is to walk around your own home, your own yard, or even your workplace.
Right.
Look at the tools and the infrastructure you rely on. Ask yourself, are these things designed to look good, or are they actually designed to work well?
Are they camouflaging a hazard just to maintain a fragile aesthetic illusion?
Yes.
It really changes how you evaluate the physical world around you. You start seeing the hidden friction between how things look and how they actually function.
It's a completely different lens.
Which leaves you with one final provocative thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
Let's hear it.
We have just explored how something as ubiquitous as a garden hose is adopting vibrant, unnatural colors strictly to prevent accidents in the grass.
Right.
So look ahead to the future of consumer goods. What other historically camouflaged outdoor tools or even everyday household items might be entirely redesigned in the next few years to prioritize human safety over blending into the background?
It's an interesting question.
Are we going to start seeing neon orange rakes so we don't step on them? High contrast, glow-in-the-dark sprinkler heads so we don't hit them with the car?
I could definitely see that happening.
At what point do we finally decide that preventing a broken ankle is more important than pretending our backyard is an untouched, pristine wilderness?
The balance between safety and aesthetics is shifting, and our backyards are the testing ground.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Go take a critical look at the tools hiding in your own grass, and we will catch you next time.